Hello all and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review we're going to be catching up with the 4th Doctor as I take a look at the latest box set from the 4th Doctor Adventures, this time around Series 9 Volume 1, starring Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor, Layla Ward as Romana 2, alongside Matthew Waterhouse as Adric, and of course John Leeson as K9. Now rather excitingly, this box set does of course take place within Season 18, the final season for the 4th Doctor on TV. And it is a rather interesting era of Doctor Who, of course the very start of the 1980s era of the show, seeing John Nathan Turner become the producer. And I do believe that this is in fact the first ever time that Big Finish have properly done a full cast audio drama series within the very depths of Season 18, taking a look at E-Space and managing to expand out the stories that we got to see within that trilogy on TV, including of course Full Circle, State of Decay and Warrior's Gate. So of course in today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the first volume of Adventures, which is available to order now as of January 2020. The physical CD box set is £24.99 and the download is £19.99, and this is the first of 2 box sets, the second of which will be coming out in February, so next month, where it will of course also be featuring another 2 further adventures. So in this review I'm going to be taking a look at the first story of this series, which is of course Purgatory 12 as written by Marc Platt, and then the second episode is Chase the Night as written by Jonathan Morris. Now this time round Big Finish have decided to go a little bit more of a monthly range route with this series, as we have 2 2-hour stories as opposed to 4 1-hour episodes, which did of course normally occur when the Tom Baker series was a bunch of singular releases. Of course with the Anne Kelso series last year we did get to see a conversion within the 4th Doctor Adventures, seeing the series separated off into 2 box sets as opposed to 8 separate releases, making it generally a lot easier to review. And I want to make an effort to listen to the Tom Baker Adventures simply because I started listening to the Anne Kelso series last year and I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed Anne Kelso as a character and I enjoyed the 4th Doctor, and considering that this is really the 4th Doctor's only main outing each year, it kind of only makes sense to take a look at these box sets. I suppose give the 4th Doctor on audio drama a little bit of exposure on this channel, because he does seem to be the only classic series Doctor that is currently still alive that I don't really cover, which is why I want to kind of change that a little bit. Without further ado, let's take a look at the production credits on the Big Finish website. This box set is directed by Nicholas Briggs, the music has been created by Jamie Robertson, the producer is David Richardson, the script editor is John Dorney, the sound design has been created by Jamie Robertson, and the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haig-Ellery, and the cover art for this release has been created by Anthony Lamb, and I must say it is really lovely, very visually pleasing, so something of which that will certainly look nice on display if you decide to opt for the physical version as opposed to the download version. Naturally you can of course also get these stories singularly on the Big Finish website. I do believe if you just wanted the download it is £12.99 per episode, which to be honest I just recommend buying the box set, because then you get 2 Tom Baker adventures as opposed to only 1. It only makes sense. We're all Doctor Who fans and more adventures I suppose the better, obviously. Starting off this review by taking a look at the sound design and music by Jamie Robertson, because I feel like I always forget the sound designers when it comes to these reviews. I want to give them a bit more attention. His music is brilliant throughout both of the stories throughout this box set. It really nicely creates a vibe of 1980s Doctor Who. It feels like classic series Doctor Who very well, partnered with Nicholas Briggs' directing as well. It is nice to follow. It's one of those stories where both of them within this box set are good for new listeners, because you can just sit back and enjoy it and have a nice soundtrack to kind of complement the actors as well within the background of course of this piece. It's very atmospheric, both stories do very different things, and what I like most about Jamie Robertson's music is that between the different scenes that you have a few nice incidental sections and a few little nice tunes that are added in there to nicely divide up the story and generally just make it a pleasant listen. So yeah, big compliments to Jamie Robertson. He did a wonderful job as per usual. So firstly, taking a look at Purgatory 12 as written by Marc Platt. Of course this is, as I mentioned earlier, a 2-hour story divided up across 4 parts at around 25 minutes to half an hour long, and we get to really nicely see some divisions made within this TARDIS team. Of course it is a very unusual TARDIS team and era of the show, because we have the Doctor, Romana, Adric and K9, and Adric is a stowaway on the TARDIS, and both the Doctor and Romana don't particularly want him there. However, they kind kind of tolerate him, and there is lots of tensions between the different characters simply because they are so different, and this story utilises that and plummets a bit more development into Adric's character earlier on within the season, which is something that is kind of missing from the actual season itself that appeared on TV. We get to see Adric leaving the TARDIS and fending for himself because he believes that he doesn't fit in within the TARDIS, and the Doctor and Romana kind of check back a few years later, they believe, to see if he's doing okay, essentially, because the Doctor always intended to go back for him, and it turns out that they've naturally struck a little bit of difficulty. We have a small little world that is also a colony that is basically for criminals, alien criminals that have been put on this planet, and they basically live out their life. It is one big massive prison, and you have this rather mysterious force, and it turns out that all of the inmates are slowly starving because there is little resources on the planet to keep them alive, and naturally the Doctor and his team wish to help. And I think the wonderful thing to take out of the early half of this story is their interactions between Tom Baker, Romana, K9 and Adric. Tom Baker is of course as natural as ever. He can reel off every single line as the Fourth Doctor like he is never left from the TV show itself, which is a compliment that I would give to every single story, because by this point Tom Baker basically knows the character of the Doctor inside out. There are some really lovely moments between him and K9 in the early half which is just brilliant, and I hate to use the word banter, but there is some nice comedic moments between them, such as him telling K9 to shut up, and of course with K9 being a logical computer, he carries on kind of talking every so often and butting in bits of exposition, which is just funny and entertaining to listen to. And the key thing that I took from this story, and something that I didn't realise until literally the last part, was I liked it because of Adric, which is very rare. Originally, of course, with the complete Blu-rays being released recently, Season 18 was one of them, and I watched the entirety of Season 18 as well as Season 19, and it did highlight a lot of the flaws that people have with Adric. For me, I think that he can be quite irritating at times, and this story gives him development to make him more tolerable. And I think that the most important thing that I took from this story is that, as I say, I didn't acknowledge that until the later half. Purgatory 12 almost made me forget how irritating he could have been within the TV series itself, and instead I just approached Adric as another companion that has been in Doctor Who before. He was the same as any other character, and I enjoyed him. I enjoyed what he contributed to the story, and I enjoyed his intelligence and naivety, because although he is a very intelligent mathematician, he does quite often get very basic things wrong, as illustrated throughout both Season 18 and Season 19, being of course one of the main creators of the majority of the flaws between both of those seasons, and causing a lot of slip-ups and problems that the Doctor needs to solve on top of every other problem that occurs throughout the story. And as per usual with Marc Platt's writing, this story has a very nice world that has been built. You can nicely imagine all of the cast on this criminal planet and all of these prison characters within their different cells, and of course the Doctor trying to help, and basically the prison inmates can't see why he can't just put them in the TARDIS and take them away. The criticism of this story overall is that it does tend to lose itself, I would say, within part 3. I think that this episode could have very easily been cut down to a 3-parter as opposed to a 4-parter, and if it did that, it would have been a bit more concise and effective. So either cut it down an episode, or maybe add extra elements into the story itself that made it slightly more fast-paced and interesting. Throw a few more additional problems and things into the mix, and that said, the ending was pretty decent. So to me the major flaw was indeed part 3, because you could have virtually took out part 3, or at least blended it into the script of episode 2 and episode 4, and got rid of the third part entirely, just to make the story a little bit more concise and run a bit easier. And the monster of the piece, or the sort of foe that is lurking underneath the planet's surface, is the Darklish, which again was an interesting concept. I was worried very early on that this story was going to fall into traditional Doctor Who run-of-the-mill territory. I think it very nearly did, but because of the developments that it gave to Adric, I kind of let it slide, because it just made him more enjoyable, and because of that I enjoyed the story more than I would have if Adric wasn't there, and I kind of let the maybe flaws within the alien sort of Darklish character slide, because it focused solely on Adric. Same with Romana. Romana didn't really have too much to do because it was focused more solely around Adric, and interestingly K9 as well, and naturally the Doctor is as loud as ever. Final thing that I'm going to mention for this story is the development of K9 as well. It's absolutely brilliant to see K9 being used as a character that is more than just a robot dog, because especially within season 18 we got to see them endlessly find different ways to get rid of K9. He's running out of batteries, we're going to put him into Brighton Beach and basically make him drown and explode. They just wanted to get rid of him all the time, because I do believe the writing team didn't like the character at all. And in Big Finish, of course, we get to see a reduction in all of those issues, because they are not dealing with an actual robotic dog. John Leeson can just come in, say his lines, and K9 himself can just whiz about everywhere. He's not defeated by bad terrains or anything like that, although there is still references to it. And because the Doctor kind of gets rid of Adric within the early half, we see K9 be concerned that the Doctor will eventually get rid of him, and we get to see Romana talking to K9 on a more personal and emotional level. K9 has actually developed a form of sentience and emotion to the Doctor and to Romana, and we get to see him meet a friend throughout this story known as Pip, another computer, and he associates Pip as his friend, his first ever friend, because he can relate to her as a computer, because they kind of work in a very similar way, and that was lovely. It's nice to have K9 having development and certainly making him more likeable and more like an actual character with emotion, as opposed to just a character that can answer scientific questions and basically reel off exposition constantly. Next up we have Chase the Night, as written by Jonathan Morris. Once again a 4-part 2-hour story, which this one was a joy to listen to. It really was. We have an alien world once again. However, this story basically relishes in the concept of Christopher H. Bidmead season 18 style, because at this point within Doctor Who there was this very unusual obsession with science. Of course they took the fact that Doctor Who is a science fiction TV show very literally. Of course within episodes such as Meglos and The Leisure Hive, we got to see a very heavy focus on science and physics, and almost making Doctor Who a learning experience for the viewer, which is lovely. I did like that concept, however it wasn't really presented too well within the series. Jonathan Morris here basically uses that so well. He uses that idea and creates a wonderful landscape that is so visually striking for an audio drama that you pretty much effortlessly imagine within your head. We have this planet that is tilted on an axis. One side, the side that the sun is hitting, is basically on fire, it's completely inhabitable, and then you have the other side which is in night, it's in darkness, and everybody can live in that side of the world when it is dark. And naturally when the planet orbits and turns, the side that is dark becomes the side that is light and therefore uninhabitable, and vice versa. Therefore we see these people create a train track around the entire planet. A spaceship is developed into a train, and we see the cast basically running around the planet in order to avoid the light, so we have them chasing the darkness quite literally. And it is such a lovely concept, and the first half of this story is focused very heavily on the physics. I was a little bit daunted by it because I thought, is this going to continue for all 4 parts? Because naturally I'm not the best at science. However, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the world building that part 1 did, that was then as a result carried across the remaining 3 parts. It was a really lovely visual story, and I love the care that Jonathan Morris has actually put into building the world itself. Naturally very similar compliments pass over from the previous story. Tom Baker is brilliant. There is kind of less comedic lines throughout this story, and it is more just utilising this TARDIS team in a science fiction adventure. Tom is thoroughly enjoyable. Layla Ward is basically a female equivalent of the Doctor, and we get to see her doing a few things by herself, as well as form a closer relationship to K9, which does of course then lead to her leaving within Warrior's Gate with that particular version of K9, and Adric gets taken over by a fungus, because that's Doctor Who, as it does happen. We get to see the sciencey part at the beginning, we get to see the problem and them trying to solve the problem, and then we get the third part, which is almost the extra layer that is added at the very end of the story, that almost takes it above the rest of the story itself. It makes it more adventurous and makes it more enjoyable. I think that this story is very well paced as well. I think that we very nicely get introduced to the entire cast. We have Jane Asher in this story doing an excellent job as the main captain of the ship. Some people may like her, some people may hate her, prioritising the lives of the people on her spaceship before the Doctor and the rest of the TARDIS team, which is very logical. However, the way that she does it is a little bit questionable. There is a few dark moments within this story, such as her sacrificing people by tying them to the rail track and then eventually running over them. We don't actually see that within this story, however, but there is quite a lot of dark concepts that are thrown about that we don't really utilise too much. It would have been nice to maybe see them presented within the actual script. However, I think that this story could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone very science heavy, or go a bit more dark and gothic, and arguably a bit more stereotypical Doctor Who. So I'm glad that this episode went down the more sciencey route, because it works very well. The whole concept of the Talanitas spaceship that is now being converted into a train is such a great idea. It's one of those ones that, as I mentioned earlier, you can't help but visualise, and I think that the directing for this story really nicely brings it to life. I think that Jonathan Morris's way of writing is very real. He is one of those writers that I would love to see make the transition into the TV show itself, arguably just like Marc Platt, because both of these writers have such a great way of creating character. We have lots of variety, such as within Purgatory 12 we have a blend between aliens, lizards and sort of normal humans, and then you have the Doctor coming into the scenario as well. And then within this story you have a much more colony spaceship kind of sort of layout. However, you have different hierarchies of people. You have Jane Asher at the top as the main leading sort of commander, then you have kind of the scientists on the side, you have the engineers that are trying to get the spaceship to work, and then you have sort of the more lower decks kind of people that are just the workers of the spaceship. And because of that hierarchy, it makes it very easy to follow the story. It makes each individual personality stand out, and something that is carried across throughout both of the stories is just how alien Romana and the Doctor are. Because they are both Time Lords, they naturally see themselves above everyone, and it is a little bit on the nose at times because they are supreme and they know they are, and we see that kind of used within the later half of the second story. We see Romana acknowledging the fact that at times they do play God, and that is not good because they don't really have the right to, and they kind of reach the conclusion that they should just go around the universe kind of advising, as opposed to choosing life or death for different people. However, naturally they end up kind of doing that anyway. It's very odd, and I like the fact that both of the writers have used that because it is a very prominent theme that is used throughout season 18, or really any time that you have two Time Lords within the same scene. Overall, for the Fourth Doctor Adventures, Series 9, Volume 1, being Chase the Night and Purgatory 12, overall a solid start to Season 9 of the Fourth Doctor Adventures on Big Finish. I think both of the stories do rather unique things, however really nicely keep into the format of Doctor Who Season 18. It very much feels like it has been extracted from that period of Doctor Who history. Personally, the highlight of this box set for me is Chase the Night, simply down to the actual structure and world building that story presents. It feels very unique and different, and it's a story that I recommend very much to new listeners as well, because the Fourth Doctor is brilliant, as within both stories, and all of the TARDIS team have something to do. I love the fact that both of the episodes also utilise K9 in a way that doesn't just deliver exposition constantly, and I like the fact that both of them are quite sciencey in their approach. Purgatory 12, as I've mentioned, is a nice concept. I love the fact that it develops Adric and actually makes him a more likeable character on the same level as other companions. However, I feel like the story may have needed a few more elements added in there just to make the story run at a slightly more quicker pace, because I did find myself fading out on a number of different occasions within the later half of the story. So overall, a decent box set. If you're a fan of the Fourth Doctor, then I definitely recommend it. However, if you want to start listening to Big Finish, there is probably a few stronger episodes out there such as the Series 8 and Kelso box sets, because I kind of feel like that series is lovely and self-contained and does a few more different things. Naturally, because we have 1 hour stories, it's much more quicker paced and much more focused around a new series audience kind of format that this box set kind of loses because it is 2 2-hour stories. So do of course stay tuned for kind of the second half of this review as I take a look at the second half of the 4th Doctor Series 9 Adventures, which is of course coming out in February 2020. And until then, do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content every single week. So thanks for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.